Hi everyone, this is Trish with Wreath Designs by Trish, and today on our tutorial I'm going to show you guys how to make a farmhouse wreath. So we are going to use the Poof method, and then we are going to go back over that with some 20-inch ruffles, okay? So I'm going to pan the camera down and I'm going to show you everything that we're going to use today for our tutorial, okay? Alright, so you can see we have a whole thing of, a whole table full of stuff here. So this is going to be our sign that we're going to use. It's a little on the heavy side, so I put quite a few pieces of wire on the back so we can use it to attach, you know, to our wreath, because it is a little on the heavy side. So I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be really secure. So I took some wire and I stapled it to the board, and then I went back over it with some hot glue just to make sure it was super secure. So I put 5 pieces of wire on here, and so that's the reasoning behind why I put so much wire, because it is a little on the heavy side. Okay, so you're going to need, you know, your sign, and then we're going to use 3 sets of 2.5-inch ribbon tails, and these are all cut at 12 inches. So our first ribbon tail is going to be this really cute farmhouse. Then we have a black and tan cabana stripe. And then we have this little chicken wire with different kinds of chickens on it. So that's going to go really good with our sign, okay? So the supplies, you're going to need 4 zip ties. You're going to need 3 for attaching our poof to the frame, and then you're going to need 1 for the bow. You're going to need, of course, a staple gun, because we stapled the wire to the back of the board. Some little snippers for the wire, of course, floral wire. This is 26 gauge. I always use 26 gauge because it's the thinnest and it's the easiest to hide. And then, of course, a pair of scissors. You're going to need a rotary cutter to cut your ruffles over here. And then we're going to use 4 different ribbons for our bow. So we're going to use the 3 that we have for our ribbon tails, and then I have a small gingham check maroon and brown 1.5 inch, and we're only going to use that for our bow. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside over here. I'm going to put our supplies to the side. Okay, so we're going to use the Easy Bow Maker for our bow. So if you don't have one of those, then you could probably use a bow dabber. It's almost exactly going to be the same thing. So if you don't have an Easy Bow Maker, you could probably use a bow dabber. And then we have a 15-inch work wreath frame in burlap color, or a light brown, whichever color you want to say. And then we have some of this basket weave mesh, okay, and it's in like a cream and black, and this is what we're going to use for our ruffles, and I cut them at 20 inches a piece. So we have 18 20-inch pieces, and that works out perfectly because you have 360 inches on a roll of mesh. So if you cut them at 20 inches, you'll get exactly 18 pieces. And you know, the last one might be a little bit under or a little bit over. It's not going to make that big of a difference. So don't worry about if your last one only comes out to 18 inches. It'll be okay. All right. So these are going to be our ruffles. So I'm going to put these to the back because we're not going to use them yet. Let me get my sign and my ribbon tails over here. And then the mesh that we're going to use for our poof is going to be this 21-inch tan and white, or cream. It might be a tan and cream colored mesh, okay? So this is going to be used for our poof on the base. We're going to make a 10-inch poof, and then we're going to come back and put our ruffles over this, okay? And it's a fabric mesh, and so this is what we're going to use, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to open all of my ties on the bottom first. We're going to do the bottom first. Some people do the bottom, some people do the top. You're still going to get the same result either way. So if you're used to doing the top first, then, you know, by all means, you know, do what you're most comfortable with. You're still going to get the same result either way, so it doesn't, you know, doesn't really matter if you start on the top or the bottom. I'm just used to starting on the bottom, so that's where I'm going to start. Okay, so I have a couple of little frays right here, so let me cut those off first. Okay, so the edge on here is pretty good, so we're just going to go ahead and ruffle it up. Just take your thumbs and put them really close together, and then just walk your fingers forward. Okay, so you're going to have just a little tail right here. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it right in front of a tie. So we're going to start with this tie right here. So we're going to take our zip tie and we're going to put it right next to that tie, right to the left of that tie. Okay, so we're going to get it secure. We're going to pull it around to the back, and then we're going to tighten it all the way. Okay, so you can see the zip tie right here, and then this is our tie right here. So when we go all the way around and we come back, we're going to cover up this tie because this is going to be the last tie that we tie into. Okay, so let me snip this off and we will get started with our poof. Okay, so you can either, there's two ways that you can do your poof. You can either measure it out 10 inches with your mat here, or you can skip one tie and go to the next tie and use that as a measurement if you don't have a board, okay? And it's pretty much going to be the same result, okay? You know, it might be, you know, an inch off or here or there, but it's totally fine. You're not even going to be able to see the difference, okay? So you can either measure it with your board 10 inches, or you can skip a tie, go to the next tie, use that as measurement, and then come back one, okay? So once you get that done, then you'll just take your edges and you'll fold them under, and you'll get you a nice little poof, okay? So one of the most important things to remember when you're doing a poof is that you want to make sure that your edges stay facing down. If they want to start coming up, you know, traveling up around, then, you know, it's going to be really, really hard for you to control that poof and to get a nice looking poof, because your edges are, you know, you won't be able to fold your edges under easily. That's what the point I'm trying to get across, is you won't be able to fold those edges under, okay? So we're just going to keep on doing our poof all the way around. Okay, so we're back here around to where we started. So we'll measure out our last poof, and then we're going to tie right into where we started, and we're going to cover up that zip tie that we put there. Okay, so you don't have to worry about anybody seeing it. Nobody's going to know it's there except for us. Okay, so now we're going to jump up to the top. We're going to use our second zip tie, and we're going to tie into the closest tie that we have, which is right here in front of us. Okay, so we're just going to take our mesh, and we're going to do exactly what we did on the bottom. We're going to take it and we're going to secure it right in front of a tie. Just get it as close to that tie as you can, bring it around to the back, and then tighten it all the way, and then we'll clip off that little excess that we have back there. Okay, so now we're going to go all the way around on the top. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're still going to do our 10-inch poof. Let me open my ties before I forget. I always have a bad habit of forgetting to open my ties when I get on the top. Alright, so we're just going to do the same thing that we did on the bottom. We're just going to go around and make us a little 10-inch poof. Okay. So guys, you do not need to like Superman tighten these ties when you get your mesh into them. Okay, you just put your mesh down and just loosely, I mean not like loosely, like real loose, but you don't need to like, you know, just tighten it with everything that you have. You know, that's not necessary to keep your mesh in there. Okay. So just stick your mesh down in there, close it, and then twist it one time. Okay. You don't need to you know, put a vice grip, tighten it like a vice grip to keep it in there. It's not going to go anywhere. So just make sure that you're keeping your edges down as you go around. Just if you're new to wreath making, that's very important when you're doing a poof, is to make sure that you keep your edges down. That way you'll be able to open your poof. My edge wants to start going crazy on me all of a sudden. You see, I've been doing this for a while now. It's sometimes it still wants to fight me. So okay, we got a couple of more pieces, a couple of more poofs that we're going to put in here, and we'll be done with our poof part, and then we'll move on to adding our ruffles on top of this. Okay, so this is going to be our last poof, and we're going to tie in to that tie that we started with. which is right here. Okay, so we're going to cut this off. You can grab about maybe 5 or 6 inches and just cut it off. Okay, so we're going to take this tail, and you can either go this way with it or you can go this way in between the 2 layers, and we're going to take it and we're going to pull it around to the back, and we're going to secure it to the frame. Okay, so just twist it up, find you a place to secure it. We're going to use our 3rd zip tie, and we're going to secure this to the frame. That way we make sure that this is not going to come apart on us. Okay. Oh, my zip tie just broke. Let me get another one. Bad quality control. Alright, so that's our last zip tie, and we are done with the poof part. Okay. Alright, so there is our 10-inch poof. Okay, and if you want to go back and you want to, you know, do a little bit more with your poofs and get them the way you like them, you know, however, you know, to your liking, it's totally fine. But this is the look that we're going for. Okay, so now we're going to come back and we're going to put our ruffles in here. So we have our 20-inch ruffles right here. We're going to take them and we're going to put them in our wreath. So when I'm doing a ruffle with this type of mesh, as you can see, you have black running across. So if you cut it really close to that black, it'll start unraveling. So to keep, not to keep it from doing it, but from keeping it from being a lot more noticeable if it does start to unravel on your wreath, I like to take it and fold it under just like maybe 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'll just tuck the end of it under, then I will start ruffling it up. And because of the nature of the way this mesh is made, it ruffles really easily. Okay, and then I'll take the other side and I'll tuck it under as well, and then I'll make me a little bow tie ruffle, and we're going to stick it straight into the wreath this way. Okay, so I'm just placing it straight down on my tie. I'm not opening it up, and I'll twist it once. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like once we get it on there. Makes a cute little ruffle. Okay, and we're going to go around the entire wreath with this. Okay, so take your end, fold it under, put your thumbs in the middle right next to each other, and we're just going to walk our fingers forward. This is probably one of the easiest meshes to ruffle up because of the way that it's made. Alright, so we're just going to keep doing our ruffles, and we're going to place them down in each tie. So I like to use the pencil ties when I'm doing a wreath for my my wreath form. I prefer them to be pencil ties because they are longer than the thicker tinsel ties, and because they're longer, I don't have to open my ties whenever I'm putting something in there. So if you have the tinsel ties, which are thicker and shorter, then you might have to open your ties, especially when you're doing a thicker mesh. Okay, for your base, if you're using a thicker mesh on your base, then when you use that tinsel tie, you're probably not going to have nearly as much to work with. So that's why I prefer to use pencil ties, because they are longer, they're thinner, and they're longer, and I don't have to open my tie every time I put something down in it. So, you know, that's just a personal preference of mine. I thought I'd pass that along. Okay. If you want to use the thicker ties, you know, that's totally up to you. And it's fine either way. But I'm just letting you know that if you do have the thicker, shorter ties, you most likely will have to open your tie when you put your ruffle down in it. Okay? Because we're still going to come back and we're going to put ribbon on top of these ruffles. So you will definitely, if you have not opened your tie, if you have a shorter tie and you put your ruffle down in it, if you have not opened it, you definitely will need to open it when you put your ribbon in. So either way, if you have a shorter tie, you're going to have to open it sometime. So that's why I like to work with the pencil ties, because they're longer and I don't have to worry about going in and opening that tie throughout my whole project. Okay, so once we get our ruffle on here, we're going to take it and we're just going to fan it out like this, okay? That way we can get the whole ruffle seen. Okay, we got one more ruffle on the bottom, and then we're going to jump up to the top. Okay, so we got them all around the bottom, all the way around. So now we're going to jump up to the top and we're going to do the same thing on the top one. So when you're putting these on, you see how one is covering up the other, especially up here on the top where the ties are closer. So just pick both of them up and stand them up against each other. Okay, that way you're not covering any of your ruffles. Okay, so just pick them up and stand them up against each other like that, because the ties on the top are a little bit closer, not a whole lot, but they are a little bit closer than the ones on the bottom. So your ruffles are gonna, when you lay them down on top of each other, they're gonna cover one way or the other. So just pick them up and stand them up against each other. Okay. Got a few more pieces with these ruffles, and we'll be finished with the mesh part, and then we can start adding our ribbon tails. So you see how the black is coming unraveled, because when I was cutting my mesh, I cut it just a little bit too close to the edge. So that's why I like to tuck my ends under. So in case it starts doing that after you put the mesh on your wreath, it'll be tucked under and it won't be as noticeable. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be our last piece, and we will be done with the mesh part. Okay, so there is our wreath with the mesh on it. Very nice. It's all got some nice ruffles there. And if anything looks uneven, you know, if you can see holes anywhere, you know, you can just go back and move your mesh around if you think it's very obvious. But once we get our ribbon tails on, you really won't be able to see any kind of hole, okay? So that's that part. So now we're going to go ahead and put our ribbon tails on. So we have our chicken with the chicken wire. We have a black and white cabana, and then we have a farmhouse ribbon. Okay, so the way that I like to do it, and these are all cut at 12 inches, just in case I didn't say that earlier. I think I did, but I'm not sure. So when I put my ribbon tails on, I almost always put 3 in each tie, and I almost always use a 2.5 inch, because if you do have any holes anywhere, if you use 3 pieces and you use 2.5 inches, once you fan your ribbon tails out, it will close up those holes, or not close them up, but you won't be able to see them. Okay, so I stack all 3 on top of each other. I fold them over, I find the center, and then I'll scrunch it up the middle, just like this, okay? So we'll fold it over. And because, look how much tie I have left, guys. You see how much tie I have left? It's like probably 2.5 inches left of the tie because it is a pencil tie. So I still do not have to open my ties. I'm just going to place my ribbon tails right down on top of that tie, and then I'm going to fan them out. Just like that. Okay. So you see the way they're fanned out? So if I did have a hole here somewhere, when I fan them out like this, it covers so much that, you know, if there is a hole there, you won't be able to see it, okay? So that's why I personally like to use 3 2.5 inch ribbon tails for my ribbon tails. So another thing that I like to do is every time I put my ribbon tails on, I use a different one on top. I don't put the same one on the top, the same one in the middle, and the same one on the bottom every time. I like to mix it up because visually that looks a lot better than having the same one on the top every time. It gives your eye a reason to travel around the wreath. If you have the same one on every time on the top, the middle, and the bottom, to me it just doesn't make your wreath very interesting. I mean, if that's personal preference, if that's what you like to do, then by all means do it. But this is just the way that I like to do it, you know. But when you're making a wreath, you absolutely do it the way that you like. There is no wrong or right way to make a wreath. So we're just going to go around. We're going to put 3 in each tie, and we're going to do only the bottom for now, okay? Because we're going to go up on top. We are going to put our sign on, and then we're going to make a bow. And after that, if we have any blank spots or bare spots, then we'll go back and we will add some extra ribbon tails where those blank spots are. But I personally do not like to put ribbon on the top until after that is done, because as you saw at the beginning, my sign is fairly large. So it's going to take up a lot of the top of the wreath. So if I was to go and put ribbon tails at the top and then put my sign on, more than likely my sign is going to cover half of those ribbon tails. So to me, that's just a waste of ribbon that nobody's going to be able to see. So that's why I like to wait until after I put my sign on and after I put my bow on, and wherever I have any bare spots, I'll go back and add ribbon tails. That's just another personal preference of mine. Don't be afraid to, you know, yank on your ribbons to get them where they want to be, where they need to be. Let me put it that way. Because you're twisting them in there. When you put them in there, you're going to twist it a good 3 or 4 times. So they're going to be pretty secure inside that tie. So don't be afraid to yank on them a little bit to get them where you want them. Alright, so this is going to be our last one for the bottom. I did cut extra just in case we needed them at the top, which we more than likely will. So I actually cut 12 pieces at 12 inches of each ribbon. So we might need to go and cut a few more. We might not. But once we get our sign and our bow on the top, then we'll be able to see if we need any more. But we're going to put these out of the way for now, and if we need them later, we'll use them. Okay? Alright, so that is our ribbon tails on the bottom. You see how pretty that looks when they're all different? Okay, so now we're going to put our sign on, our very heavy sign. So I'm going to put it on one side, and you see how much this takes up of the wreath? I mean, it really takes up a lot of the wreath. It takes up one whole side of the wreath. So if I was to go and put ribbon tails on this side, they would totally be covered up. So that's why I didn't do that. Okay? So we have 3 pieces of wire on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to push it down straight through the mesh to the base. Your mesh has holes in it, so don't be afraid to stick your wire through the mesh. It's not going to mess it up. It'll forgive you. But there's nothing wrong with pushing your wire down through the mesh to get it to the base. Okay? And like I said, guys, this is a really heavy sign. So I'm going to tighten this wire as much as I can without squashing everything. Because once I get it upright, if I don't have it really secure, it's going to want to slide down. Okay? So just remember that when you're using a heavier sign, make sure that you are getting it really secure to the wreath frame. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I can actually get my wire in between a couple of pieces. So I just move my mesh aside, and I'm securing it to the bottom of the wreath frame. Okay, so we got one more piece for the top. Okay, so now that we got the top secure, I'm going to work on the bottom. It's kind of hard to show this on camera because I am working from the bottom, but just take your wire and just find you a place. You can either move your mesh to one side for now and then move it back, or like I did on the first piece, I just pushed it straight down through a piece of the mesh. So I'm going to have to do the same thing right here because it is right in the middle of a poof. So I'm just going to take both pieces of this wire and I'm going to push it straight down through one of my poofs to the back side. Okay. Alright, so now we got our sign really secure, which is probably the hardest part about making a wreath, is getting your sign on. A lot of people struggle with that when they first start, but the more you do it, just like with anything else, the easier it gets. Okay, so there we go. We got our nice little chicken, and it's really secure. It's not going anywhere, and that's what we want. We want to make sure that this sign doesn't go anywhere once we put it on. Because if you don't have it secure, once we get it upright, it's going to just slide down towards the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to put this aside and we're going to make us a bow to put on this side. Okay, so let me get out my easy bow maker. All right. So we are going to do what is called a 2-1-2 bow. Okay. So I want my tails to be as long as the sign, which is probably about maybe 14 inches. So from the 8 to the 8 is 16. So I'm going to go from the 8 on one side to the 6 on the other side because our easy bow maker has measurements on it. Okay, so I'm going to go from the 8 on this side to the 6 on this side, which will make 14 inches. Okay, I'm going to scrunch it up. And guys, take out enough ribbon to where you're not fighting it. Okay, so I scrunched it up. We're going to give it a half twist. We're going to place it down in between our pegs. Okay, so our tails are all going to go down towards us. So now we have the back side of the ribbon facing up. We are going to make a 6.5 inch loop. So we can either take it and put our ribbon down in between the pegs and let our pegs scrunch it up, or we can scrunch it up ourselves. Either way, you'll get the same exact result. Okay, so we'll give it another half twist. We'll place it down in here. I'm going to check to make sure we have our 6.5 inch measurement correct. Okay, so now since we gave it that half twist, we have the back side of the ribbon facing up. So now we're going to do another 6.5 inch, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like if you put it straight down in the peg. Okay, so you put it straight down in the peg, you let the peg do the scrunching for you. We're going to twist it again. We're going to give it that half twist. We're going to make another 6.5 inch loop. Stick it down in the peg. Let the peg do the scrunching. Half twist. This is going to be our last loop. We're making 2 loops of this black and white stripe. We do not have to twist on the last one, okay? So we have 2 sets of loops at 6.5 inches, okay? So now we can just use the tail that we have on here as measurement, okay? All right, so that's our first one. We made 2 loops. Now we're going to use this farmhouse. We're going to make 1 set of loops, okay? Take out enough ribbon to where you're not fighting it. So we're going to measure out our 14 inches. We're going to scrunch it up. We're going to twist it. Okay, guys, I forgot to say something. Okay, so you see how this has a pattern on it. So if we were to do it exactly like this, somewhere when we're twisting and turning it, the words, they're going to end up upside down, okay? So what I like to do is I like to measure out my tails and my loops separately. That way all of the wording is facing right up, okay? So we have 14 inches on each side, so we're going to need 28 inches just for our tail part, okay? So we'll measure out 28 inches. We're going to fold it up, find the middle, scrunch it up, and we're going to place it down in here. So this is going to be our tail part, okay? So now for our loops, we are going to do 6-inch loops, okay? So we're going to need 12 inches for one loop. We're going to need 12 inches for the other loop. So that comes out to 24 inches. And then we're going to need just a couple of extra inches to overlap it, okay? So cut out 26 inches. Okay. So this is how we're going to do this. So find you an even number. We're going to use the 20. Okay. So we're going to need 16 inches. We're going to need 6 inches one way. We're going to need 6 inches the other way. And then in the middle, right here, we're going to have just a little bit of overlap. That way when we scrunch it up and we place it down in here, it's not going to fall apart. So that's what the little extra on the end was for, okay? So now we're going to scrunch it up. We're going to place it straight down in the bow maker like this. And you see how the words are now facing, they're both facing right side up, and that's what we want. If we did it the other way, somewhere in there it was going to be upside down, okay? So if you're the type of person that it does not bother you that happens, then by all means do it the other way. But I prefer to do it this way. I like to have all of my words facing the right direction, okay? All right, so we have 2 loops, we have 1 loop. So now we're going to come back with the chicken wire, and we're going to do another set of 2 loops, okay? So the black and tan cabana stripes, the loops were at 6.5. We went down to 6 inches on the farmhouse. So the chicken wire, we're going to go down to 5.5 on the loops, okay? All right. So measure out your tail. We're going to scrunch it up. We're going to give it that half twist. We're going to go down to 5.5 on our loops now. So just move your loop that's on there out of the way. We're going to scrunch it up. We're going to give it a half twist. Check our measurement. We're going to do 5.5 on the other side. We're going to scrunch it up. We're going to give it that half twist. we're going to make another set of loops at 5.5. Scrunch it up, give it that half twist, and then one more set of 5.5. And on the last one, we do not have to do our twist. We just place it straight down in there. Okay, and then we just use the tails that are already on here to measure out where we need to cut it. All right, so now we have 2, we have 1, and we have 2. Okay, that's the name 212. We are going to add one more on the top. We're going to add a 1.5 inch. And I just like to add just something just a little bit extra, just to give it, you know, a little something extra. And I chose this right here, this gingham red, because we have just a little bit of red right here with the star. Okay, so that's why I chose this gingham red. Okay, so we're gonna measure out our tail. We're gonna make one set of loops only. Okay, we're gonna give it a half twist. We're gonna do maybe about a 4.5 inch loop right here. Okay, and then we'll give it our twist in here, our little half twist, and we'll do 4.5 on this side, and that's it. Okay, we'll just cut off our tail right here. All right, so there is our very farmhouse looking bow. Okay, and you can always just take your ribbon and roll it back up on the roll if you take out too much. Not an issue. It's better than fighting. Okay, so let me get out a zip tie because one of them that I had out broke. All right, so we're going to take a zip tie. Some people like to use pipe cleaners, but I like to use a zip tie because it's a lot more secure than a pipe cleaner. So we're going to lift up our loops, all of them. We're going to lift up our tails, and we're going to come right up the middle next to these pegs, and we're going to get this zip tie started before we take it off. So just listen for the clicks. That's when you know you got it started, and we'll pull it off the bow maker. Okay, so you see the little indentation right here that the pegs make. We're going to slide our zip tie over to that indentation, then we're going to slide it around to the back. Okay, so we're going to tighten it up a little bit, not all the way yet, because we're going to have to stick a piece of wire or a pipe cleaner down in here. I like to use wire. It really depends on the project. Sometimes I do use pipe cleaners. So this is 26 gauge wire. I'm going to cut us off a good size piece. It's always good to have more wire than not enough. Okay, so just cut you off a pretty good length of wire, 26, 28 inches, and then we're going to take it in, put it underneath that zip tie, and that way we have something to tie our bow to the wreath frame. Okay, all right, so this bow pretty much, we don't really have to do a whole lot of maneuvering with it because of the way that we stuck it on the bow maker, but we want all of our tails coming down. Okay, so just that's one thing to make sure of, that all of our tails are coming down. So we have our black cabana stripe in the back, then we have our farmhouse in between those two, then we'll take our chicken wire and we'll make an X with those, and then our gingham will be in the middle. Okay, so now that we have everything where we need it to be, we're going to turn this over and we're going to tighten the zip tie all the way. We're going to lock everything into place. Okay? So you see how we can obviously see our zip tie right here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take me another piece of this and I'm going to tie it around that zip tie. Okay? So just take you, I don't know, probably maybe a 7 or 8 inch piece. We want to make sure that we have enough. And I'm going to triple fold it. And I'm going to tie it around that zip tie. Okay? First, let me cut off the tip here. All right. So we're going to take our ribbon and we're just going to tie it around that zip tie. Okay. We're just going to tie it in a knot. Nobody's going to see this back here, so just tie it in a really, really secure knot. And if you want to cut off the extra, you can, but like I said, nobody's going to be able to see it. Okay, so I just leave mine on. Alright, so now we have our zip tie covered up. Okay, so now we're going to fluff up our bow. So fluffing up the bow might sound like technical terms, but it's really not. Okay, so we have all of our tails coming down, so we don't even need to worry about that right now. So to fluff up the bow, guys, all you have to do is just stick your hand inside each loop and open up the loop. Okay, just take your fingers and stick them inside that loop. That's all we're doing. Okay, that's one side. We'll do the same exact thing on the other side. We'll stick our hand inside each loop and open it up. And that's it. That is a very nice fluffed up farmhouse bow. Okay, so now for our tails, we're going to go through and we're going to dovetail all of them. Okay, so just take a pair of scissors, cut an angle away from yourself, and it makes a cute little dovetail. I don't measure these, I just cut them wherever I feel like cutting them. All right. Okay, so now that we have our ribbon tails dovetailed, the last thing that I like to do with my bow is I like to take the tails and I like to curl them ever so slightly. So what I mean by that is I'll take them and I'll put them on my fingers and my thumb on the top, and then I'll just pull on them a little bit and it gives it a nice little curl. Okay, we're going to do that for each one. You don't have to pull on it very hard because this is all wired ribbon. Okay, I only use wired ribbon for my wreaths. Okay, so just pull on a little bit and it makes a nice little curl. Do that for each one and gives your bow just a little bit of body. Alright, so there is our finished farmhouse bow. Okay, isn't that pretty? Alright, so now we're going to take this, we're going to bring our wreath back. and we're going to stick this on our wreath. Okay, let me pick the camera up just a little bit. Alright, so what I like to do is I like to make sure that my bow is even with the top of my sign. Okay, so I want my bow to be, when it gets on here, I want it to be right around the same height as my sign. Alright, so I'll just find me a place to take my wire and get it down to the base. I think I'm going to have to push it through my mesh, as it might be a little bit too low if I don't, and I don't want it to be low. And this is another reason why I like to use wire for my my bows, in case I do need to push it through the mesh, because you can't really do that with zip ties, pipe cleaners. You probably could, but it would be pretty difficult. Okay, alright, so now that I got my bow where I want it, I'm gonna go ahead and tie it down to the frame. Alright, okay, so now we got our bow on. We've got some long flowy tails. So you can see, guys, there's bare spots right here, right around here. So now I'm going to take my extra ribbon tails that I have, and I'm going to put them on here, okay? That way we can cover up those bare spots. And that's why, I wait until after I have everything on to put my my extra ribbon tails on. So let's bring those back. So we have 2 extra sets right here. So we'll go ahead and put it right there where those bare spots are. So if we would have put ribbon tails over the entire top of the wreath, 90% of them would not have been seen because of the bow and because of the sign. So that's why I prefer to wait until after I have that stuff on before I add my other tails. That's just a personal preference of mine. Okay, so we'll take our last set right here and we'll put it on underneath the bow, and then we'll be done. Now we'll pick the whole thing up. I will pick up the camera and I will give you all a nice shot of our finished wreath. Alright, so let me pick the camera up all the way now. We're going to pick this up. I'm going to step back a little bit so we can get it all in the camera. There we go. There is our finished farmhouse wreath. And you see how the sign is really secure? It's not moving at all. I mean, I can really shake this thing and that sign isn't going anywhere. So, and it is a heavy sign. So that's why, you need to make sure that you secure it really well when you're using a heavier sign. If you're using, a lighter sign, like a light sheet metal sign or something like that, you don't have to secure it quite as much. But with a really heavy sign like this, you want to make sure that you have it on really well. I'm trying to get this in the shot. Alright, so that's our project for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to try to do a lot more of these, and that way there's not so much chatter as my Facebook lives. But if you like what you see, subscribe to my channel, and if you're the type of person that likes Facebook lives, I also do those at least 2 or 3 times a week. So if you want to get an alert from my page, just open up any video, and in the top left corner there'll be a bell icon, and just click on that, and every time I go live on Facebook you'll be able to get an alert saying that I'm live. Alright, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next tutorial. Thank you.